is in the air, everywhere I look around. Love is in the air, every sight and every sound. And I don't know if I'm being foolish, don't know if I'm being wise, but it's something that I must believe in, and it's there when I look in your eyes. Love is in the air, in the whisper of the tree. Love is in the air, in the thunder of the sea. And I don't know if I'm just dreaming, don't know if I feel safe, but it's something that I must believe in, and it's there when you call out my name. Love is in the air, love is in the air. Love is in the air, from the rising of the sun. Love is in the air, and the day is nearly done. And I don't know if you're illusion, don't know if I see it true, but you're something that I must believe in, and you're there when I reach out for you. Love is in the air, everywhere I look around. Love is in the air, every sight and every sound. And I don't know if I'm being foolish, don't know if I'm being wise, but it's something that I must believe in, and it's there when I look in your eyes. Love is in the air, love is in the air. Oh, 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 oh.
A very warm welcome to you, dear colleagues from Tata Power and Tata Group. This is Aditya Sareen, and I'm part of the HR team looking after capability leadership, campus and cadre management. As we take forward our campaign, Love is All We Need, that is aimed at fostering inclusion and acceptance through a series of interventions pivoted on 5 key aspects: being grateful, embracing differences, driving inclusion, demonstrating empathy, and being non-judgmental. I'm so delighted to welcome you to the first session of today's. Let me begin with talking about love. What is love? Love is a connection touching the other person's soul. Love is honesty and trust. Love is helping one another. Love is mutual respect. Love means that differences can be worked out. Love is reaching dreams together. Today, as we look for insights on how you can support and grow together and create your own playbook to be healthy, wealthy, and wise, let me introduce to you our very special guest for today, Eika Banerjee. Eika is a management graduate from the FMS Delhi, a corporate honcho, one of India's leading women business leaders, a wife, a mother, author, speaker, hyper learner, entrepreneur, and a board member. And yes, the list is long, so bear with me. She has, in pursuing her purpose, founded the Eikam Resonance, an organization where she, along with her community of researchers and facilitators, delve into ancient wisdom to solve contemporary issues. Among other initiatives, Eikam also blends modern day management practices, leadership frameworks, and corporate strategic directioning with perspectives imbibed from the time-tested ancient wisdom, history, mythology, and literature. She is a Shivning Gurukul Fellow and Leadership Excellence from University of Oxford, and she's also trained by passion among leading corporate mythologists in India, and she's a best-selling author of the 52 Red Pills. She's a sought-after speaker on matters of organization and personal transformation, meaning and engagement, diversity and inclusion. Eika has worked for over many years in the corporate world in areas of banking, general management, and entrepreneurship. She also runs a festival which is called Akhyan since 2014 with the Department of Sanskrit in University of Mumbai, integrating the corporate world, academia, and popular culture. Please join me in giving a huge round of applause to Eika Chaturvedhi Banerjee. Eika, namaskar and happy to have you.
Thank you so much, Aditya. It's always such a pleasure to be here.
The pleasure is all of ours. Eika, let me start by asking you, what does your name mean? What does Eika mean?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. So, Eika, by the way, is Durga ka pehla naam. Adi Shakti at the time of conception. So, the Devi has 108 names, and Durga is Eika is the first name of Durga. But the irony is, I was not born Bengali. So I actually only, I was born at Chaturvedhi and then I married the Banerjee. So I still remember when we were getting married a long, long time ago, my parents said, token protest ki tum Bengali ghar mein shaadi kar rahi ho, ye hai. I said, is shakal ke saath, aise naam ke saath, where else will I go besides marrying the Bengali? So I think I'm just living my destiny with my name.
And by the way, let me tell you, friends, that Eika and Siddharth are a very, very powerful couple that learn together, that grow together, that inspire together. And we'll get to know more about this as we start this conversation. Eika, my second question to you is so many roles, right? I mean, I was looking at the number of adjectives that I had for you, and I think there were many. How Well, I think there is some network issue at Eika's end. Yeah, Eika, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I'm here. I thought we lost you.
Oh, I thought I thought I was losing you there. That's technology nonetheless. All right. So how do you balance so many roles and how do you manage all this?
So we're going to involve Siddharth in the conversation very soon. And I must admit, this is something that I've learned from him. And he'll share the story of where he learned it from. But we have this philosophy that I've imbibed from him, which is about looking at yourself as if you're an air traffic controller. So you're sitting there, and there are loads of these planes flying, some taking off, some landing, some just being in the sky and hovering. And your job as the air traffic controller is to land one plane at the time. Right? So I think Siddharth actually does it much better than I do. But for me, it's always about focusing on that one thing which is at hand right now, irrespective of what else is happening. So there's full awareness of what's happening around you, whether it's children, whether it's family, whether it's business, whether it's multiple clients, schools, whatever it is. But in this moment, what do I need to complete? And we must have this conversation later, Aditya, about the fact that this whole thing of multitasking is actually a myth. The brain is a very simple organ. It can process only one thing at a time. But that one thing needs absolute focus and undivided attention. So I just focusing on landing one plane at a time. And that is something I've learned from Siddharth.
Yeah, but then after the one plane is landed, it clears the rapid exit taxiway, goes and parks. You then immediately change focus to the next plane that's hovering around?
Yeah, absolutely. Then I hand over. Then I don't even follow through on seeing passengers उतर गए या नहीं हो गए, deplaning हो गई कि नहीं हो गई. Then that's not my business. जब तक वो मेरे bucket में है, मेरे basket में, तब तक करके then move it on. So I found that to be very useful, especially when you're in the middle of your corporate workplace and you're dealing with really high impact decisions everywhere. it becomes a very useful tool to make sure that your part in that decision is full and complete. You can come back and review it later to say, hey, uske baad kya hua, and do a feedback analysis and impact analysis. But in that moment, you need to finish what you're doing and hand it over. So, by the way, one of the other things that my marriage has taught me more than my workplace has is that my job is to inform you, not convince you.
All right.
So my problems, everybody is a thinking adult. We can all take our own decisions, and you're as aware of life as I am. So, and that allows me to find my balance and my peace, where I know what I'm dealing with at any given point of time, what's within my circle of control, and what is my concern, and have I parked my concern right. So that helps hugely.
So, Eika, I was doing my research on you and Siddharth, and I didn't tell you about this, by the way. I spent a couple of days, getting to know both of you, and I know that you both, want to make an impact. Both are looking at, building relationships, bonding, sharing, and caring. Why don't you tell us more about that? Do the two of you, by the way, have almost all similar interests, or are there some different interests that you two have?
You will see Siddharth very soon. And you will realize we are very, very, very different people. And I think what's helped us grow together, and again, I will give that credit to Siddharth completely, is that he allows for our own space. Oh, see, we got married very early, Aditya. We've been together now, we've been together since we were 20 years old. And we've grown together.
And for those of you who don't know, Siddharth and Eika went to FMS together. They got married immediately after their FMS course. Is that right, Eika?
So I'm going to tell you the secret here, right? We were actually seeing each other before we got through FMS. We were just terribly lucky to get through FMS together. We wasted absolutely no time on the campus. We wasted absolutely no time afterwards. And when you meet Siddharth, you'll realize he's all about absolute efficiency and dedicated focus. So we got married immediately afterwards as well. But to come back to the earlier thought, Aditya, we've always felt that I've always believed in resonance, which is the whole is greater than the sum of parts. And so I've always felt that if we were a team, and Siddharth has always believed that we are a fabulous team. Between my principle of resonance and his principle of us being a team, we've evolved different spaces together. I've always believed that if you have to come together to do something, the whole really must be greater. The impact must be much, much larger than just him or just you coming together. Siddharth, on the other hand, has always believed that we tag together well, we finish tasks well, we're a good project, we're a good project team together. And I think we just applied that basic principle when we work together. So I'm like this, so Siddharth thinks in Excel grid. Siddharth thinks in straight lines and algorithms and destination and travels straight to it. I, on the other hand, think in decision trees and gaming forests and life journeys, and we'll see where it goes. So I think between the two of that, pretty much the whole script gets covered really well. And that's how we found our balance together. And because we found our balance together, we've also worked very hard at seeing what's the impact of that balance. What's the difference we want to really create in the world? What's the legacy we want to leave behind? And so that sort of just helps us find our balance, our meaning, our purpose, our next steps, our projects, and put them out there.
This is interesting, from indices and tables and Excel charts and grids to absolute thinking, which is a decision tree or is abstract thinking. How do you guys then work it together? I mean, this is something that I think all of us would like to pick up here. So here I find colleagues that there are two people who think differently, yet have maybe similar interests. There are two different processes that they use to reach out to the destination, if I may say. How do you do it? I think it'll be good to have Siddharth in here as soon as we can.
I think you should get Siddharth in to answer this because he organizes us.
Right, so ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Siddharth Chatterjee from FMS. Again, a very successful corporate leader, having worked in technology, FMCG. He's a very known name, a very sought after speaker. Well, on this panel, if there's anybody who's not sought after, that's me. The other two are phenomenal people. So let's welcome Siddharth Chatterjee. Siddharth, hi, good afternoon to you.
Hi, super to join in.
Pleasure. The pleasure is ours. So Siddharth, I was asking Eika about an Excel sheet talking to a PowerPoint is what we knew, or an Excel sheet being pasted in Word is what we definitely know about. But an Excel sheet being working with a decision tree or with an abstract thinking, can you just tell us how does this power couple gel together on these two different processes and yet perhaps the same outcome? Happy to have your views to that.
So I think couple of things. Like Eika might have mentioned, we are different people with possibly some 2 or 3 common foundational elements that bind us together. Um, our interests are different. The way we approach learning can be different. Um, I think of the end point. In fact, I'm a very big believer of, work your way backwards from the objective. Eika is someone who genuinely enjoys the journey. Um, and so therefore, it also reflects into the kind of people that we are from a behavioral perspective. So I get easily impatient about uh, reaching the destination, as it were. Eka's quite okay to kind of keep it free flowing. Uh, so therefore, different approaches to life, different individuals. But I think what perhaps draws us closer or binds us is the fact that we recognize and respect each other's strengths that we bring to the table. And so therefore, perhaps, coming back to your question, the Excel perhaps comes more from me, the structure, the organizing principles, as it were, um, and a lot of the purpose, a lot of the why, a lot of the genuine inquiry, which can be free flowing and not necessarily about a specific agenda, a lot of distillation, वाद विवाद जिसे हम कहते हैं, a lot of that comes from the strengths that Eika brings in, both as a person as well as someone who has deep knowledge in many fields. So she's literally the one who kind of sees all the dots and connects them. And I'm perhaps one of those who says, okay, what do we do with this so that we are able to learn more and use it more? And also perhaps structure it in a way that it is relevant and useful to a different audience as well, apart from ourselves. And that's pretty much what happened even in the case of a book, a journey and then a book that we did together, which is 52 Red Pills.
So in fact, I must build up on that, Aditya, and I must share with you how the book happened. How actually the book happened later, how the journey happened. So I've been on this seeking journey of ancient wisdom for a while now. It's been almost 12, 14 years now. And for the last 5, 6 years, I've started finding the articulation and really applying it, and it's come alive for me. So there were these nights, and I'm the kind of person that I am. So there were these nights where so Siddharth would be mildly curious, It's like, okay, Eika is indulging in something, and he knows that once I've gone down that path, it's a rabbit hole. I'll just go deep, I'll emerge, surface, some random thought will come up, and that's what started happening, right? So I'd wake him up in the middle of the night at 3:30 and say, Siddharth, if you sleep at 10 o'clock, your liver will heal better. Or some other day that, Siddharth, if you do this, this will happen. So for the first few days, he indulged. Then he said, Madam Dekho aisa, there is a bedside lamp, there is a notebook there, there's a pen there. Please write it down there at 3:30 at night. And in the morning, we'll discuss over tea. So he ran through that process, the classic learning process of first awareness, then moving to acknowledgement. And then at some point he realized that there was far more to it than, like he said, I was looking at the dots, connecting them, but not manifesting them. And so Siddharth said, in fact, over that 2017 New Year break, we were sitting in Kanha in the middle of the forest. And he said, you know what, Eika, it's now time to organize your knowledge. So that's when we sat down and created, our long list of 62 topics that we wanted to know more about. From there, we put down names, places, people, concepts, created that entire draft, and then decided that we were going to go on the 52 Red Pill journey. And that's how, throughout 2018, for every week of 2018, we actually picked up a topic, learned more about it. I dove into ancient wisdom and scriptures. Siddharth went through modern knowledge and white papers. We got together, we met up with experts in that field and went through that whole process of iterative discussion to come up with our learnings on it. And that's a very classic project example of how Siddharth and I work together. Honestly, I think we haven't spoken about it much, but even in our parenting, we would be very similar on this, right? If our children had to speak about it.
I think so. I think we have two daughters. Like Eika mentioned, we got married early, and we also had kids early. So in the times in our 20s when our MBA batchmates were partying and going to all kinds of exotic vacations, we were literally diaper changing and bringing up two daughters. Of course, as life plays out, now we are young parents who have teenage daughters. The elder one is out of the door into university, second year, and the younger one is in grade 10 going into grade 11. And I think to Eka's point, they will come to me for structure and they will go to Eka for unfettered intellectual conversation, जिसका necessarily कोई agenda नहीं है. And I think that's what Eka means when she says that we're two different people with two different approaches, yet enough respect and understanding of what we bring onto the table and some common intersection which allows us to use our strengths towards some kind of common direction. 52 red pills being one of them, and and Eka, you're absolutely right. Parenting being the other big project that we have.
Let's get into a little bit of Vad Vivad that you have. So how do you guys convince each other? And I heard Eika saying that, I just bring up a point. We don't get into the aspect of convincing, but still, I mean, when there's somebody who's extremely structured, and I was reading somewhere that, Siddharth has post-its all around and he works on Excel. And by the way, friends, he would come in and fill up the Excel of what has he achieved every day for his goal. I was researching that. And Eika is then again more of a intellectual thinking, and that's more of unstructured. So how do you guys convince? I mean, who can then prove a point to each other? I think this will be interesting.
I like this. So obviously, Aditya, we've now been married for 21 years this year. We've been together for 25 years now. So that's a happy day. And what happened is, so हमारा ये होता था that obviously with a couple that's where both the two people are highly educated, very very alpha. At one point of time, very ambitious and aspirational. This is not the person I was when Siddharth married me, or when he fell in love with me. This is who I've become. But at that point of time, I was your classic B school, alpha, aggressive, ambitious, aspirational, very high ego. And so was Siddharth, right? So for the first few years, we realized that with every argument, and obviously there was enough argument and conversation, which relationship doesn't have that? We were pushing the limits with every argument. But every argument was getting worse. Every fight was getting more bitter. Every screaming session was spiraling out of control. But to the point where we would even forget ki origin kya tha uska. Because obviously then it doesn't matter, right? That's classically how your fight happens. कि आप इतना झगड़ने में इतना busy हो जाते हो कि आप भूल चुके होते हो कि आप किस चीज पे झगड़ रहे हो या किसके लिए क्या important है. And I think we did reach one snap point, 15 years ago, so that long time ago actually. And which is when we sort of, I'm sure conveniently erased it. No, but I think uske baad we realized that we were just harming ourselves individually, as a couple, and as a family. So I think that's when the fight was over, and Macbeth, as they say, when the deed was done, the battle lost and won. Then we sat down and had this conversation, and this was a long time ago, where we established certain principles. So we agreed that अगर झगड़ा हो रहा है तो we will figure out कि किसके लिए वो ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है and back off. I know it sounds easy to do and simple in theory, but in practice it wasn't. And so, for instance, in a very classic spousal issue, your disagreement is कि एक particular जगह पे lunch के लिए जाना है या नहीं जाना है. बहुत छोटी सी बात है, right? Let's assume my brother's place we have to go for lunch, right? In an earlier avatar, so we've had fights where we've both driven down to Jaipur for a wedding. और फिर झगड़ा हो गया तो शादी नहीं अटेंड करी after living in the same hotel, right? From there to reach that stage where we realize कि यार, is it more important for me to be seen with you at my brother's place for lunch, or is it more important for you to take that afternoon off and be with yourself? It's not easy. It's not easy because for me, remember, I'm coming, for both of us, our contexts are very important. We're both holding on to those contexts. But for me to actually then distill that, my need to be seen with him at my brother's place for lunch is actually a very social need. It's a very external need. वो मेरी need नहीं है, actually external है. But for him to take that time out or space out and be with himself is far more important. So we've evolved this for most of the things. It doesn't usually work as smoothly as I'm now narrating it. But yeah, I think we've got there. What are the other principles we evolved over all these years?
See, on a slightly lighter note, I'm a well-trained husband. So I believe in the principle of kya chunna hai? Like, do you want to be happy or do you want to be right all the time? But that's on a lighter note. I think what works for us is, and I think a lot of credit for Eika figuring this out for the both of us early on in our journey. And the reason I say early on in our journey is because we got married also pretty early on. Like, you are just out of B school, get married at 23 and a half. By all standards, it is early. So, but we figured out the kind of rules of play early, and all credit to Eika for that, for saying that let's understand what's important to each other as individuals, because we'll always have societal, financial, all kinds of decisions to be made in our journey together. And like we said at the very beginning, we are different people with different ideologies, philosophies, etc., and also a lot of different interests. So obviously, it won't be that you do my thing, I do your thing, because then somewhere there's a compromise. So what we said is, let's recognize what is important at the heart of who we are and what we hold important. And that for us has been the key to unlocking how can we make decisions of what is core and what is critical to us. I think the other principle which has also helped us is, and again, a huge lot of credit to Eika, because in her journey, in her evolution, she's not only grown herself, but she's made sure that she has been my unpaid but expert life coach as well. Now she will of course tell you that she extracts value out of that, but I think I've benefited tremendously from her evolution also. And the evolution is not as simple as just articulating a set of rules. Set of rules is great. That was what helped us when we were 30. But when we hit 40 a couple of years back, I think again, there was this inquiry to say that how do the rules change? How does that contract between us change? How have we grown as people? If we hadn't grown, the contract doesn't need to change. But we had grown as people. So how does the contract change? And where can we accommodate each other's growth? So I think by kind of keeping an eye on and having respect for our personal growth and what it means for our relationship to grow, I think we've given ourselves some reflection and some shared actions, which has helped our couple journey together.
So over 25 years that you've known each other, who's become more of whom? So has Siddharth become more of Eika, or Eika has become more of Siddharth?
No, I think we started as both of us being very similar, but we've both grown into more of our own people. It's the other way around.
And that's exactly the essence of this discussion, that you value differences and yet you can achieve together as a couple. I think that's exactly what we want to achieve today, right, Eika? That you could be different and yet you could be there for each other. I mean, look at the kind of the point that you made, Eika, a couple of minutes back, that what is important for the other person there, right? Whether it's important for you to be seen with Siddharth at your brother's place for lunch, or he taking some time off and just maybe just kind of rehashing the way he wants to face the world from the day after. I think fabulous thoughts. But again, coming on to the rules, right? We spoke about rules. Rules are easy to form, but how do you ensure that the rules are followed? Yeah, we all know about, and you're Siddharth is still in the corporate world. You've been Eika leading various organizations. How do you ensure that the rules apply at work, at home? Sorry, everything comes to work. What about home?
So for me, it's easy, Aditya, because over time, वो कहते हैं ना करत करत अभ्यास के जड़मति हो तो सुजान. I mean, you don't build your muscles in one day. You have to do your reps every single day. I am, for me, I am one person. I am not different at the workplace and I'm not different at home. With me, what you see is exactly what you get. And honestly, whether it's the journey of being a parent or the journey of being a CEO or the journey of being a spouse or a daughter-in-law or a sister or a sister-in-law, I don't have different rules at all, which makes it very easy because first principles pe operate kar rahe ho na. You're not worried about the responsibilities or the roles. There's no context, there's no counterparty. Your entire conversation on your rules is with your own self. So that makes it so much easier because then it doesn't matter what the occasion is, what the situation is, or who the counterparty is. So if I'm curious at home, if Siddharth brings up something at home and I don't know about it, I'll ask him, ki, Acha, explain this to me. No, but if this is true, then why should that happen? It's the same thing that I will do at my workplace. I may be the CEO, but even as the CEO, when my team comes in and says, Eika, we should do this, because of the person that I am, I will talk to them the same way. I said, yes, but explain to me like I was a 4-year-old child about why we should be doing this. Usme kahin pe koi ego nahi aata, curiosity nahi aati. Or when my child walks up to me, my daughter walks up to me and talks to me about a certain kind of music or a musical genre that I haven't heard of, it's the same curiosity, right? Oh, that's interesting. You just used that word. Acha, tell me more about it. So, because the first principles are easy, and I'm speaking for myself, I think Siddharth, it's an interesting question you raised. I don't think Siddharth and I have ever had a conversation around this, but I found it very easy to apply the rules or out of sheer practice because I make them only for myself, and I then abide by them, and then I abide by them everywhere. So, in fact, right now as we talk, honestly, Aditya, Siddharth sitting in Singapore. Okay, I have shifted my parents' house. I've come back after shifting their house 2 nights ago. For the last 3 days, I've had both my parents and my in-laws in the same house here without Siddharth being there. Right? So I'm saying it's just the person. It isn't about your context. So I find it very easy to apply rules when they're applying only to myself irrespective of context. So that's my mantra. Siddharth, what's yours? We haven't ever spoken about it actually.
I think we might not have articulated it thus, but the fact, Aditya, that besides marrying early, we were also early parents. So we spoke about our daughters who are now 19 and 16. Mm, and what happens is when you are a couple in a house atmosphere, then whatever you are also gets picked up by your bachas. And so therefore, we have learned through our kids who we are as individuals and who they see us as a couple as well. So in that sense, the advantage of being a young parent is that our children have grown up with us as well, and we have come up on the maturity spectrum of being young parents to now a little bit of experienced parents. We can say that after bringing up 2 daughters who are 19 and 16 now. And so therefore, we have realized who we are as individuals by getting feedback from our daughters as well in a home context. So look at who we are as people. I'm a coffee drinker. Eika is a tea drinker. I love the beaches, so Goa for me. Eika loves the Himalayas, so Landor, Mussoorie for her. There are certain books that I love, which is more business fiction, and there are certain books that Eika loves. She's very recently reading some interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita. I'm into long distance running. Eika is into yoga. So very different. I'm just giving these examples to say that it's not that we have all shared interests and everything is, and to your point of who looks alike and have you converged. So I think the way that the way we have evolved is that we've become even stronger, built muscles in the areas of our interest, and yet walk hand in hand with some of those interests binding us together or holding us together, or the end output holding us together. Now, to your question, is it an easy process? No, it's not. Do we have all the answers? No, we don't. In fact, all the principles that we can tell you, all the rules we can tell you, but we are still struggling to solve a couple of existential questions. Where would we finally see ourselves settling down? We've been global citizens. We've lived in India, we've lived across Singapore, London, Sri Lanka, many cities in India. So what is the final destination for us? So not yet figured out. But yet, if you work to go back to some of the principles that we've articulated, what gives us confidence, what gives Eika and me both confidence, is that I'm sure we will figure out some mantra, which is a combination of us knowing each other's strengths, each other's interests, each other's aspirations, and then figuring out not a compromise solution, because वो भी हमने बहुत होते हुए देखा है, where the husband says चलो beach नहीं, wife says चलो पहाड़ नहीं, बीच में कहीं पे मिल लेते हैं. So both are now unhappy. So when you do an average solution, one leg might be in cold water, icing cold water, the other leg might be in hot water. On the average, you are fine. तो वो नहीं चलता है अपना. And so therefore, I think it's difficult to apply some of these rules in practice, and there are lots of open loops. But I think the excitement is that you are with a partner who understands you, who grows herself, and who also ensures that there is space and respect for each other to grow. So in that sense, I'm truly lucky.
I think what you brought out, Siddharth, is extremely important, that it's not averaging. That ठीक है, इस बार तुम्हारी जगह चलते हैं, next time मेरी जगह चलेंगे. And that's what, excuse me, I hope my wife is not watching. I didn't share the link with her for this conversation. Maybe I'll edit it and share it with her later. Is that, you both are enjoying the way you want to, and both of you are respecting each other's choice, each other's interests. I think that's a very important point for us. And that actually leads me to the question of stepping up for each other. I think you've done that in your life, right? You both stepped up for each other. And I want to also talk about the aspect of sharing the load. See, in your early parenthood, when you were both, if I may say, aggressive corporate leaders, where you wanted to, reach where you have already reached, and Eika, you've given it up, and you're an entrepreneur now. Now, in that rush, right, there are targets. We all know closures. There are issues of growing businesses, etc. How did you both share the load? You have parents on both sides, right? You've been traveling across the globe. You are both in some of the best organizations that one can think of. Both have aspirations. At the same time, there was one daughter, then there were two daughters. How did you share the load? And I think this is going to be a learning for all. Ladies and gentlemen, if you look at the playbook, while Siddharth and Eika say they don't have all the answers, trust me, you stay with us for another half an hour, you will make a lot of success in your life, both personal and professional. So Eika, Siddharth, what is your mantra of sharing the load?
So I'm going to go first on this, because I know that Siddharth has stepped in hugely, and therefore I will let him take the bigger piece in this. But while we were growing, and I must confess, Aditya, that I haven't been a very easy person to live with. I wasn't. Now I am. Siddharth, now I am. You don't get to quote this back to me. But
Siddharth is given a caveat. He says he wants to be happy. Yeah, so we don't need an endorsement from him. Go ahead.
No, but there are these two incidents that I specifically wanted to talk about. The first one was very early on in our career. In fact, I don't think Siddharth even remembers both these incidents, but they were my epiphany. So before that, Aditya, I've always believed that किसी भी relationship के सिर्फ दो aspects होते हैं. One is love, which is why you're in that place in the first place. And I'm not talking about personal relationships, professional relationships. आप कोई नौकरी कर रहे हो तो आप क्यों कर रहे हो? आप किसी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में हो तो क्यों हो? आप कोई किताब पढ़ रहे हो तो क्यों पढ़ रहे हो? आप कोई कंटेंट कंज्यूम कर रहे हो तो क्यों कर रहे हो? Etc. So there are just two aspects to it. So the first is love, which is why you're in that place in the first place, and the second is respect, which is how do you deal with differences, right? So love allows you to also figure out what's non-negotiable. So if I have married you for the way you learn, I can't pick up a fight with you, or make a non-negotiable out of the fact that आप तौलिया कहीं भी फेंकते हो. They're unrelated. If I didn't marry you because you were clean, I don't get to throw a tantrum about it if you're not clean, right? So that's about love. And respect is how do you deal with differences. And I still remember we were very, very young. In fact, our second daughter wasn't even born then. And we were based in Bangalore. And our older one was then about 2.5 years old. There was a particular incident, and I am going to take time about this. Siddharth had to travel from Bangalore to Bombay from Thursday to Tuesday. I had to travel to Delhi from Sunday to Wednesday. So there were these 2-3 days where a 2.5-year-old daughter was uncovered. So we had decided that Saturday afternoon, Siddharth left for Bombay on Thursday. Saturday afternoon, I moved with the daughter and the maid to my cousin's place in Bangalore, where I was to park her. Siddharth would collect her back on Tuesday. That's how the logistics are done. So, by the way, we've had huge help from our ecosystems, parents, family, sisters, brothers, everybody. I mean, it's a village that has raised us, not just the two of us, but even the children. So I was parking her with a cousin. Saturday afternoon, I reached there. Saturday sham tak, the child got high fever, like really high fever. Bukhar utar hi nahi raha tha, 103 ho gaya, 104 ho gaya. We rushed her to the hospital, admitted her into emergency. They put her on IV drip and all that tamasha was happening. Sunday afternoon, I was to fly off at 1:30. Sunday morning, obviously, I took the call, kiya, bacha hospital mein, there's no way that I'm going. I called up my boss. And I told him, I said, sir, I'm not, even before I called Siddharth, I said, look, this has happened. I'm with her at the hospital. I'm not coming to Delhi. So he disconnected. After that, I called up Siddharth and I said, all this has happened, etc., etc., etc. I'm cancelling Delhi. Siddharth said, Eika, don't cancel Delhi. I said, no, I can't go just now. He said, I'll come back right away from Bombay. I'll come back right away. Tum jao. So I said, Siddharth, you've already begun what you needed. And there was no gender in that conversation, right? So I said, look, you've already begun what you needed to do. At least one of us to complete kare use. So he said, nahi Eika. He said, the moment you call up your boss and say you can't go to Delhi, there'll be the usual gender stereotypes that will come back to you. To say that, ye dekho, matlab yahi hota hai, when you hire women and they can't come and children crisis and emergency and this and that. He said, whereas if I get up here and say, look, my daughter's in the hospital and I need to get back to her, I will have far greater respect and acceptance of that. And literally, Aditya, he flew back from Bombay to Bangalore. We literally met at the airport, exchanged notes, medicines, everything. And I flew to Delhi. And I remember when I called my boss back after I'd spoken to Siddharth and I said, look, I'll come. It's okay, Siddharth's flying back. He actually turned and said, "No, koi zarurat nahi hai. I've already got a substitute. I've already got somebody else who will fly to Delhi with me." So and for me that was a very huge reprieve. It was very heartwarming. It was very validating for me to know that here's a person who sees me beyond a gender. Matlab, there's truly a person-to-person connect. It isn't about the gender. It isn't about the role. But just jo aap baat kar rahe the, share the load and stepping in. Similarly, the second incident, and I must tell you about that one because that was one of those absolute highlights of our life. We were in Sri Lanka. Siddharth was in Sri Lanka with the girls. The girls were that time 9 and 12-ish. So pretty much very adolescenting girls. And I was running a business at that time between Singapore, India, and Sri Lanka. So I was all over. I remember one of those days where I got really upset, ki matlab, tumhara career, mera bhi career, trailing spouse, we chase you, we follow you, and your career leads. One of those days. And Tilly said, stop, you're living your choices. I said, what do you mean I'm living your choices? Matlab, I'm living our family choice. Somebody needs to look after the family. One of those days. And Siddharth said, Eika, you choose to be the mother. I said, yeah, but you're also a father. No, somebody needs to look after family. He said, Eika, agar tumhe professionally kuch acha milta hai, to tum jao na. Go wherever you want. I said, no, but your career is always led. He said, but if you find something, you go. And then for a minute, I was stunned. And then I asked him, I said, are you saying that if I get a job right now, which takes us out of this place, which takes me out of this place, then it's okay with you? Have we lost Aditya or have we lost me?
Now he's back. Now Aditya's back.
And then.
So, and I looked at him and I said, will you follow? I said, every time that you lead, I stay back, I look after the girls, we finish their academic sessions, this and the other. He said, if you find a job that you love, which is financially sustainable, you want to do it, you go. And I'm just looking at him. I said, you look after the girls, you'll continue their schooling here. He said, yeah. He said, Eika, you assume you're the better parent, which you probably are. But क्या हो जाएगा? He said, we're not too bad ना, मतलब घर थोड़ा ज़्यादा गंदा रह लेगा या हम junk food ज़्यादा खा लेंगे. He said, but we'll manage. With parents, grandparents will pull through. And then, Aditya, I looked at him and asked him, I said, but why haven't you said this to me before? He said, Eika, I run my job. I run your business, career, family, household, your parents, my parents, friends, children, my career, everything. He said, Eika, हम अपने बच्चों को सिखाते हैं that if you don't respect your books and toys, nobody else will. So, Eika, if you don't respect, you're a fully grown thinking adult, if you don't respect your professional choices, why are you expecting me to mollycoddle you? And Aditya, 3 months after that conversation, I actually I actually made the first CEO of my B school batch, man or woman. And I got the opportunity to be the CEO at Future Group. I moved back to India. Siddharth and the girls continued to be in Sri Lanka. There were a lot of red flags when I joined the organization. There were a lot of these question marks. Okay, both sets of parents contributed completely. I would fly down every alternate weekend to Sri Lanka, take care of the kids, the girls. In fact, all our lives, and I must share this, in all the WhatsApp groups for the children, where there are all the mothers' WhatsApp groups on play dates and homework and all of that. It's been Siddharth. It's actually Siddharth who coordinates all logistics always. After that, there were 3 months that I was in Oxford doing my achieving program in Oxford. And Siddharth coordinates all play dates. All the mothers know him. And, in my worldview, I think he also appears like quite the hero to them. So with these two incidents, I shall hand over to Siddharth on sharing the load.
No, I think you've said it for both of us. But Aditya, I think a couple of things. Of course, it takes a village. We know the role that our parents have, grandparents have, etc. But I also sometimes find that our own friends, our own couple friends, hesitate from sending their kids for especially when the kids are small. They hesitate to take help from their grandparents, even if the grandparents want to, saying that, "Arey, nahi, nahi, mera bacha chala jayega," etc. Ultra possessive. Our daughters have grown up a lot of time with our grandparents, and the relationship today that they have with their grandparents, touchwood, is phenomenal. And that is attributed to a lot of quality time that they have spent independently of us uh, as a unit, as a family unit. The second thing is being clear about some choices in life. I strongly feel that sometimes we have self-imposed barriers. In all my jobs that I have done, I've made it very clear to my organizations, to my teams, to my colleagues, to my bosses, that जब बच्चे का phone आएगा, तो if there is a 30-member meeting happening, or I am chairing a boardroom meeting, जब बच्चे का phone आएगा, तो I will step out and take that call, right? Because the kid calls when the kid has to call, not when you might have a slot in your diary. So I think when we talk about sharing the load is, it's a combination of some of very small little actions that you do, which enables a couple and a family unit to coexist in this very chaotic world. And all of us have high pressure jobs, we have time conflicts, etc. But I think articulating a few principles that are important to you, and then colleagues understand, your bosses will understand. So I think the second piece is understanding what's important and articulating it to you and gathering support. So you don't have to gather support only from your family. You can also gather support at work and be very clear about some of the non-negotiables that you have. And I gave one example of a non-negotiable that I used to have. And then the third part is knowing at what points of time of the career journey, and especially if you're a double career couple, knowing what part of the journey somebody can lead and the other can follow, and then somebody else leads and the other follows. So I think, and it's nothing to do with gender, it's to do with looking at what choices are what is net positive contribution to the family unit. And I think that's the way that we have tried to balance two very hectic professional lives along with two very hectic personal lives.
I think some very, very great learning there for all of us couples and would-be couples to understand that, there are certain non-negotiables. And I think many a time we have barriers in our mind. मैं बोलूंगा तो वो क्या सोचेंगे, unless you state it, how would you even know whether वो क्या सोचेंगे या क्या नहीं सोचेंगे, right? I'm just taking that cue. Secondly, I think it's also important for us to understand that what am I existing here for, right? So I think what I could gather is that, you're existing for both of you and for your kids. and therefore you have certain priorities in life. And I think what I can say after a 47 minutes conversation with both of you, I think you've both lived. You've not existed. Some of us just merely exist, right? We just exist. There is a Netflix, there is a traffic, there is a family. We just kind of flow with it. But I think here is a couple, ladies and gentlemen, which has lived their life. Can I ask you a question with your permission? Any regrets in life that you have today?
So before I answer that question, let me also, as I reflect upon when you say experiencing life, living life rather than existing, I think one more thing which has helped Eika and me is something that might be useful for the audience. So Eika is naturally charming. So she will go out and connect with people like none other. I, on the other hand, am very happy to be with my books and with my Netflix and so on and so forth. But I think in our youth, one of the things that we figured out as an early married couple, as early parents, is that because we were early in those journeys, we needed advice and we needed conversations with people who had walked the path. So we have a lot of our friends who are actually much older to us. So the reason why we have learned and matured in our journey together is because, and a lot of that credit to Eika, is that we've gone out and met and become friends with and have deep relationships with people who have walked the path 5 years, 10 years more than us and built those relationships and those friendships. That has allowed us to absorb a lot of the things that we are sharing today. So it has not really come from academic study, or it has not really come from because we come from a certain context, but it's come from the fact that we've got a lot of inputs from really fabulous people. And of course, then Eika and I spent time distilling those inputs into principles that we could live with. Now, coming to your question on regrets, well, not really. In the sense that, yes, I do regret that I could not. There was a point in time when I was completing my school education and I wanted to go abroad and study. And I couldn't, because at that point in time, we didn't have the resources to go out for undergraduate study outside of India. And then I had written it on my to-do list in life. कि वो कभी ना कभी करना है. And lo and behold, when I was 35, I got an opportunity to be sponsored by the British government to go and study at Oxford, which was fabulous. So I think it's one thing that I have learned is that if there is anything that I really truly desire, I write it down. People have various words for it. It's called manifestation, expressing a wish in concrete, etc., etc., and then the universe conspiring. So it sounds a little fuzzy, but it's always worked. And if it has not worked for me in the first instance or the second instance, a lot of things have worked for me by the third time. So the trick is not to give up and to keep chasing what you think is worthwhile in life. So that's the way I would look at it. Eika, I believe, has a far more interesting take to it because she sees life in various colors. I'm a little bit more black and white.
So Anka, while Siddharth spoke about how it takes a village to raise, and I really want to bring that point out a little more, because very often, so we've learned to trust. Part of it came from the fact that we got married early and were early parents. Part of it came because both of us took on some very senior corporate roles very early on in life, right? And like I said, I'm all about being one person. When my child is with my grandparents, with my parents or Siddharth's parents, their grandparents, then somewhere I'm also trusting that they know what they're doing. So I'm not sitting at my office constantly worrying about वहाँ क्या हो रहा है, वो कर तो नहीं रहे हैं, बच्चा टीवी ज्यादा तो नहीं देख रहा, spoil तो नहीं कर रहे खाने में, look after तो नहीं हो रहा. Because I am also trusting the universe and trusting them to say that they know what they're doing. This is their grandchildren. Similarly with the maid, I've left my kids at home all the time, right, with the maids. With the trust that they ही रहे होंगे. Of course, we've had accidents. कि मतलब an 11-month-old child of ours got burnt with garam coffee and the maid called in panic. All those things have happened, right? Very growing up issues. Similarly, at the workplace, my learning for life has been that जब किसी को काम दे दिया है, trust them to do it. Trust their intention. Capability, if there are issues, somebody will come back to you, ask you, but learn to trust. I think that's a very big one. Siddharth alluded to it, that we have a lot of friends who don't trust either their teams at the work, or their spouses, or their grandparental support structures, or somebody else to look after their children. So somewhere you have to let the child breathe, let yourself breathe, and let that child's ecosystem breathe, right? Um, on regrets, and so I think we spoke about it earlier. Uh, for the first 20 years post adolescence, so from the ages of 13 to 33, um, I was a very different person from where I am now. I was living a very external script. I was all about being approval seeking, respect seeking. I was all about proving a point to you. I would rise to any challenge. And there's a whole pattern of that, right? So, class 12, I wanted to prepare for engineering. But I took up biology as well because somebody challenged me कि तुमने bio इसलिए नहीं लिया क्योंकि difficult है. I said, really? I'll show you. So I took my class 12 in 6 subjects. I wanted to do physics, but studied economics because economics was cool and physics was not. And I went into banking because banking was cool. MBA in banking because it was cool. Left to myself, I might have probably, done psychology or history or just the scriptures, for which I'm making up for the rest of my life. So if you ask me, I think that is perhaps the only regret, that I wish I had embraced myself earlier than those 20 years of the dark ages. But having said that, in hindsight, I'm also very grateful, because if I hadn't experienced that, I wouldn't value this so much more. So
I'm going to ask you a slightly personal question, and you'll have to forgive me for this, right? Eika, can you imagine Eika Chaturvedhi Banerjee without Siddharth in your life, and what role has he played? Can you just quickly just rewind 25 years and think about this?
While she thinks about it, I'm answering from my end. I cannot. सवाल ही नहीं है. Cannot.
So Siddharth cannot imagine life without Eika Chaturvedhi and then Eika Chaturvedhi Banerjee. Eika, now, yeah, I know you're thinking.
No
by
pressure.
the time, no pressure.
Take your time.
The reason that answer comes so prompt, Aditya, is because that's a conversation we're having, right? Ki ab Tavishi chali jayegi college in another 2 years. I want my pahad, he wants his beach. So, we're figuring out ki kaun kya karna hai. That's where that answer came back. And I'm of the opinion that this, again, I have become such a huge believer of Prarabdha and saying this was meant to be. So, can I imagine the last 25 years without Siddharth? No, I cannot. I think he brings in sanity. He tries to bring in discipline, and he brings in focus to our life and existence. Right? And I must share this with you because we are being so personal about it. हम love की बात कर रहे थे ना आदित्य. So I always, and I work with senior leaders and couples and people and women leaders all across, right? Across the industry. That's what I do now. For me, it's always a red flag and I'm glad you asked this question, because for me, it's always a red flag when you ask somebody that, why do you love someone? And their response is about who the other person is. Right? To me, love is about what it does for you. So if somebody tells me, oh, look at him, he's so good looking, or he's so intelligent, to me, it's a red flag because you're not operating out of self. But the moment somebody is able to tell me that, no, they make me feel happy, they bring joy to my life. So what it does for you, right? Because that's when you're valuing that love. And to me, that's what Siddharth's been about. And as I always say, when you're getting married to a person, you must have your criteria for marriage before you have your person that you get married to. My criteria for marriage is very simple, right? And this is long before Siddharth walked into my life. I wanted to be with somebody who I wanted to grow old with. So when the deed is done, the battle lost and won, who do you want to go back to? The second criteria was about who's that person who you can share your victories, your defeats, your triumphs, your joys, your life, your thoughts, your emotions with completely, who you can share yourself with. And the third one was, who did I want as the father of my children? Right? And that's all of this is what Siddharth brought in. So he walked into my life and completed an otherwise alright jigsaw puzzle.
Isn't she adorable, Aditya?
Colleagues, all of you that are watching us, this is true love. Look at the eyes of Eika, look at the eyes of Siddharth. Their eyes are blushing, and because each one of them, kind of complete the other one. I wish we could just go on and on talking, amongst the three of us. I know we're running short on time. I'll quickly come in with some questions. This one is a little. I think this comes from a couple. I don't see names here, so you have to excuse me for this. But I'm eager to know, and this is the person who's asking, not that me. I want to ask, but who manages finances in this couple, and do you have any goals, financial goals together?
I'll take this and then you.
No. You don't take this at all.
I will take this first. First, I will take it. Then you can take it. So, by virtue of the fact, Aditya, that I was the banker in the family for the first 15 years, I used to manage the finances. I still run the house. And in fact, I think that's been our principle ever since we got married. My salary has run the house. Even when if it's business income, I've run the house. And Siddharth's salary has funded savings, investments, big ticket items are all his. Chota ticket items are all mine. Having said that, 6 years ago, 6 years later, 10, 12 years ago, I am now, beyond.
देखो ये सब लंबा, this is all लंबा चौड़ा. Eika is like पैसा क्या होता है? पैसा is like she now evolved to the level of saying पैसा क्या होता है? So these kind of jobs are then done by me only. किसी को तो संभालना पड़ेगा, तो मैं संभालता हूँ.
Thanks for that.
Household expenses I run. I still run all household budgets and expenses.
No. I'm saying the principle of Eika is now in the evolved state. No, but I think there is perhaps there was one more kind of angle to that question about having financial goals. And I think, yes, we do have financial goals. We benefit from the fact that Eika in her past life has been a wealth banker, a private banker. And so therefore our understanding of finances is decent. So we kind of know the options, we know the basics of financial planning and financial goals. So that gives us an advantage. And I write down stuff. So to your point, Aditya, earlier about goals and goal setting and writing it down, we write down stuff. And because we've worked at it together jointly with some degree of experience, I think it's helped us.
There are two more questions. I know we are absolutely out of time, but I know it's not a private talk show, it's Tata Power's show. We can definitely go beyond the cutoff time. So Siddharth, this is for you. The person says, question to Siddharth. In your corporate roles, do you also apply these principles while working with your women colleagues?
Oh, absolutely. I've had the privilege to work with a lot of women leaders, a lot of them who I have seen achieve personal and professional success over the last 22 years that we've been working. Look, I think we said three things, and Eika alluded to a few of them. First, we believe that individuals who we work with, who we interact with, are also adults, fully formed adults, having their own lives. And so therefore, I encourage that for people to make their choices. I think the only input that I add is that make those choices obvious, as in share those choices. So if you have something on your mind, don't keep it to yourself, right? So articulate that out so that you can get help, support, understanding from your ecosystem, whether it's your home ecosystem or your professional ecosystem. So that's one. Second, I believe some of the women colleagues that I have worked with have been fantastic in terms of giving me insights, because they are far more empathetic. They read people far more. So while I get a lot of insights from Eika, at work, I have got the benefit of a lot of insights from women leaders and women colleagues who I've worked with. Fantastic in terms of saying, adding that little bit of thing that I might have missed out. So I think I've gained a lot from having their voice in the room or on the table. And then the third piece is that I think when you are solving for some problem together, then it's kind of bereft of gender. Then it's about the voice that brings in the insight and the data. And I've seen some fantastic amount of piece that's come in. So I do hope for a world where voices, different voices, and we of course have gender as one of them, but different voices are heard. And that's, I think, a common wish that Eika and I have, also because we have two daughters who will go out in the world and hopefully make their voices heard.
The closing question, and this colleague says, demonstrating empathy for a colleague, irrespective of gender, especially when they have personal priorities that clash with critical deliverables, is more challenging than it seems to be. Absolutely so. And in this case, what are your views on this particular, thought? When there is a colleague at work who's going through personal issues, and then there are deliverables that are not being met. How do you manage such a situation? What are your views for that?
You want to take this first? Should I take this first?
I'd let the expert. So Eika advises me on a lot of these situations. So I turn, this question, when it has come to me, I have turned to Eika for advice. So who better than Eika to help?
Let's go to Siddharth's life coach, Eika.
Also, like I said, in whether it's the role of a corporate CEO, or whether it's the role of a mother or the role of a wife, I've always found it, and it isn't about empathy of the other person. That comes later. For me, the first thing that I would offer to the table is understanding, and I won't say walking in your shoes, but at least understanding the situation from the outside. Because if you're involved in that situation, clearly you're muddled, right? You're already in the middle of the crisis. And Siddharth will affirm to this. I've always been called a very good crisis manager, always, across contexts, whether it's friends or it's family or it is home. So I found it very useful to step back, to offer that role of stepping back when I can list out and sort it out for myself. First, understand the situation for myself. Once that situation is understood, like I said, I go back to that first principle of landing one plane at a time. Right? So whether it is helping my colleague land that one plane at a time, or my friend land that one plane at a time, or my parents land that one plane at a time, or myself land that one plane at a time, or my child. Right? So in every situation, I find it very, very useful to take that step back, to sit down and sort out priorities कि भैया कौन से जहाज कहाँ पे, कौन सा आसमान पे, कौन लैंड करने वाला है, कौन सा बम अभी फटने वाला है, and then focus only on that and help them through it as well. So I found that very useful in, like I said, in any and every counterparty. I mean, 3 days ago, our daughter called us from London, saying that there's a storm here. Okay, I said, so walk to your room right now. No, but I have a meeting 1 hour later. I said, yes, but what will be the point of that if you can't walk back at that time? And so just sorting that out to say कि क्या ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है, 1.5 घंटे में storm आ रहा है या तुम्हारी 1 घंटे की meeting, क्या तुम meeting कहीं और से ले सकती हो, या अगर नहीं ले सकती हो तो फिर 1.5 घंटा नहीं 4 घंटा यहीं रहो, then don't try and walk back. Just putting those things in perspective to say what comes where. And like I said, this is a learning I've actually had from Siddharth on landing that one plane at a time. I found that very useful, whether it's in terms of empathy, whether it's in terms of business priorities, whether it's in terms of complicated personal situations, relationship situations, or work situations. So I find that very useful.
On that note, Eika, Siddharth, thank you very much. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And on behalf of Tata Power and Tata Group, all the colleagues that are there with us right now, I wish you tremendous, if I may say, contentment, fulfillment, and I think excellence in your life, because success is all that you've already achieved. I think now what you're looking for is contentment and fulfillment. I also wish that the two girls that you raised, with so much of love and affection, they become reflections of what the two of you are, and perhaps they they just spread the love, the kind of good, if I may say, the good values that you've both inculcated in them. I also, at this point, want to thank you for accepting our request and acceding to our request of making time and talking to us. I think it was one of the best conversations that I ever had with a power couple. This was no numbers, there was no PAT, there was no EBITDA, there was no investments. It was all about life. And colleagues, on that note, I think you need to make your lives meaningful. And if you look at the background that I and Siddharth have, love is all we need. I think, as I mentioned to you, love is about empathy, love is about trust, and all the words that we use in this last 1 hour and 7 minutes, I know we're over time, is all about how you can build relationships, how you can add value to each other. And I think that's what we all need. These are various dimensions of love. Keep watching this space for more as we come up with other dimensions of love and we try and make our lives and your lives better. Thank you very much, all of you, and have a great afternoon. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
So much.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.